Madam President, I rise today in opposition to Obamacare. I rise today in an effort to speak for 26 million Texans and for 300 million Americans. All across this country, Americans are suffering because of Obamacare. Obamacare isn't working. And yet, fundamentally, there are politicians in this body who are not listening to the people. They're not listening to the concerns of their constituents. They're not listening to the jobs lost, to the people forced into part-time work, to the people losing their health insurance, to the people who are struggling. A great many Texans, a great many Americans feel that they don't have a voice. And so I hope to play some very small part in helping provide that voice for them. Madam President, I intend to speak in opposition to Obamacare. I intend to speak in support of defunding Obamacare until I am no longer able to stand. To do everything that I can to help Americans stand together and recognize this grand experiment 3.5 years ago is quite simply not working. I want to also say at the outset that I am particularly honored to be standing side by side with my friend and colleague, Senator Mike Lee from Utah. Senator Lee has shown visionary leadership in standing up and taking the mantle of leading the effort to defund Obamacare and to challenge this train wreck of a law. And Senator Lee has been repaid at times with vilification from official Washington. And I will tell you, Madam President, in my judgment, there is no senator in this body, Republican or Democrat, who is more principled, who is more dedicated, who is more fearless and willing to fight for the principles that make this nation great than is Senator Mike Lee. And it is a singular privilege to serve with him and to stand side by side with him and so many others in this body, and even more importantly, so many millions of Americans all across this country. There is a problem in Washington, and the problem is bigger than a continuing resolution. It's bigger than Obamacare. It's even bigger than the budget. The most fundamental problem, the frustration, is that the men and women in Washington aren't listening. If you talk to the man and woman on the street, that's the message you hear over and over again. Why don't they listen to me? Why don't they hear what we have to say? They aren't listening to the millions of people, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians across the spectrum who say our elected officials, they get to Washington and they stop listening to the people. We just had a 6-week recess during August, where a substantial percentage of members of Congress chose not to hold town halls during the 6 weeks we had to be back in our home states, not even to give the constituents a chance to say their views. Because it's very easy when those of us who are in elected office have been here for a long time to believe Washington knows better, to believe that all the solutions are found in Washington, D.C., and the rest of the country is better, as they say of small children, neither seen but not heard. We need millions of people to get an answer. Millions of people are asking for accountability, for responsibility, for truth from their elected officials, truth about how Obamacare is failing the men and women of America. It is time, Madam President, quite simply, to make D.C. listen. And Madam President, that is a point I intend to make over and over again, because it is fundamentally what we are trying to do. We are trying together, the American people, to make D.C. listen. The whole debate we're having here today is not over strategy. It's not about process. It's not about procedure. Now, if you read the papers, it looks like it is. If you read the papers, it's all sorts of confusing cloture on the motion to the what the to the which the, that anyone outside of Washington, D.C., immediately their eyes glaze over. Even a lot of people in Washington, D.C., their eyes glaze over. And this is also not about pollsters. It's not about pundits or consultants or those who are making money back and forth on the political process. They have always been with us, and Madam President, I am confident they will remain with us for all time. The problem is D.C. isn't listening. The problem is our elected leaders are not listening to their constituents. Everyone in America understands that Obamacare is destroying jobs, is driving up health care costs, is killing health benefits, is shattering the economy all across the country in all 50 states. It doesn't matter what state you go to. You can go to any state in the union. It doesn't matter if you're talking to Republicans or Democrats or independents or libertarians. Americans understand this thing isn't working, and yet Washington is pretending not to know. Washington is pretending to have no awareness. Instead, you have politicians that give speeches about how wonderful Obamacare is. And yet, at the same time, they go to the president and ask for an exemption from Obamacare for members of Congress. If Obamacare is so wonderful, why is it that its loudest advocates don't want to be subject to it? I'll confess, Madam President, that's a very difficult one to figure out. D.C. is using a rigged process to keep Obamacare funded, to keep this job-killing bill funded. And what they want to do fundamentally is ignore the men and women of America and keep up with business as usual. You know, people wonder, why does Congress have such low approval ratings? Madam President, I remember when all of us, all 100 of us, were in the historic Senate chamber for a bipartisan meeting, and multiple senators stood up and expressed frustration with the low approval ratings that Congress have. It varies sometimes 10, 12, 14%, but it's always abysmal. And some suggested the reason was that we're not legislating enough. We just need to pass some more laws, by golly, and the American people will be happier. You know, I have to admit, that doesn't comport with just about anything I've ever heard in the state of Texas. That doesn't comport with anything I've ever heard from constituents. I'm going to suggest the most fundamental reason why Congress remains in the low teens in approval rating. Because Congress is not listening to the American people. You know, every poll that's been done for years now, when you ask the American people, what is your top priority? The answer is consistently jobs in the economy. Over and over again, jobs in the economy. And again, that's national. That is in your state, my state. That is in all 50 states. Jobs in the economy is the answer you get. And it's also not partisan. You can ask Republicans, you can ask Democrats, you can ask independents. And they say, we need jobs, we need the economic growth back. And yet I will tell you, Madam President, you and I have both served in this institution some 9 months, not very long. But in the time we have been here, we have spent virtually zero time even talking about jobs in the economy. Doesn't make the agenda. It apparently is not important enough for this body's time. We spent 6 weeks talking about guns, talking about taking away law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights. And we spend virtually no time talking about fundamental tax reform, about regulatory reform, about getting the economy going. And politicians wonder, why is it that Congress is held in such low esteem? Well, when Congress, and this is unfortunately a bipartisan issue on both sides, we need to do a better job of listening to the people. If the top priority of the American people is jobs in the economy, Madam President, I'm going to suggest to you the top priority of Congress should be jobs in the economy. You and I should be both scratching our heads trying to think of a time we weren't talking about jobs in the economy, because I tell you, we certainly haven't gotten it taken care of yet. The American people are frustrated because their elected officials don't listen. When we're home on the campaign trail, we say we listen. And yet something about this Senate floor, something about Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's the water, something in the air, the cherry blossoms, but people get here and they stop listening to the American people. You know, throughout the state of Texas as I travel, and I spent the month of August and the beginning of September traveling virtually every day on the road throughout Texas and across the country, listening, hearing the stories. The American people are hurting. This is a difficult time. Look, the very rich, they're doing fine. In fact, they're doing better under President Obama than they were before. But hardworking American families are struggling, and their life has become harder and harder and harder. And Madam President, Obamacare is the biggest job killer in this country. The American people want to stop this madness. And so do I. Here in Washington, we pass million-dollar bills, billion-dollar bills no one's ever read, often without even voting on them. We call it unanimous consent. It's only unanimous because they don't let anyone know. Here in Washington, we spend $2 trillion more than last year, and then tell voters we save money. The system is deliberately designed to hide what we're really doing. In this debate right now over Obamacare and the continuing resolution, voting to pass bills called procedure, as if it doesn't matter. We pretend it doesn't matter. It does matter. Our leaders right now demand approval for bills before they're amended. Everyone come to the floor, vote for the bill. Then we'll amend it to make it say the opposite of what it says right now. But you've already voted, so don't worry about it. We're told to agree to the bills without even knowing what the final product will be. And that is what's happening right now. Our leaders in both parties are asking us to support a bill, to cut off debate on a bill, without even knowing what's in it. It is, as the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, once observed, quote, pass it to find out what's in it. That's how Washington does business. Let me tell you how this is likely to unfold. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has said he intends to offer an amendment to determine the future of our health care system. And based on the public press reports, and I would note you have to rely on the public press reports because this body doesn't know, but based on the public press reports, that amendment is going to fully fund Obamacare, is going to strip the language the House of Representatives passed to defund Obamacare to listen to the American people. The central vote that the Senate will take on this fight will not occur today, and it will not occur tomorrow. The first vote we're going to take on this is a vote on what's called cloture on the motion to proceed. Very few people not on this floor have any idea what that means, and even, I suspect, a fair number of people on this floor are not quite sure what that means. That will simply be a vote whether to take up this bill and to begin debating this bill, and I expect that vote to pass overwhelmingly, if not unanimously. Everyone agrees we ought to take this up. We ought to start this conversation. The next vote we take will occur on Friday or Saturday. And it will be what is called cloture on the bill. Madam President, that is the vote that matters. Cloture on the bill, the vote Friday or Saturday, is the vote that matters. Why is that? Because that vote is subject to a 60-vote threshold. If Republicans vote with Democrats, then this body will cut off debate on the bill. Cloture is simply cutting off debate. It is saying we're not going to talk about it anymore. We are silencing the voices of the Senate. We are silencing the voice of the people, and we are cutting off debate. Now, why does that matter? Because once you invoke cloture, the rules of the Senate allow the majority leader to introduce the amendment to fund Obamacare and then to have it pass with just 51 votes. Not 60, 51. Now, Madam President, as you are well aware, there are more than 51 Democrats in this body. Post-cloture, after this body has voted to cut off debate, the Democrats can vote on a straight party line vote to fund Obamacare. And Madam President, I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret. When that happens, every Republican, if we get to that point, will vote against it. And every Republican will then go home to his or her states and say, look, I voted against Obamacare. That's actually the preferred outcome. To have a vote, but yet to have the result be business as usual continues in Washington. You know, it's a little bit like the World Wrestling Federation. It's wrestling matches where it's all rigged. The outcome is predetermined. They know in advance who's going to win and lose, and it's all for show. You know, there's some members of this body that if we could have 100 show votes saying, here's what we're for, but mind you, none of them are actually going to change the law. None of them are actually going to occur. None of them are going to make one iota of difference to the American people because they'll never become law. But we'll get to vote over and over again on proving how committed we are to principle A, B, C, D, or E. That, curiously, would make a significant number of senators happy. Madam President, our constituents deserve more. No more fake fights. No more hiding your votes. No more games. No more trying to fool the American people. We need to make D.C. listen.